Over the years I have read many books about the 1944 Normandy campaign, some evocatively written, but they were just words on a flat page. I can never imagine life there at the time, but I can get a little closer by seeing the land they fought over. This was Pegasus Bridge, the first thing liberated by the Allies on D-Day, just after midnight. This is the raised, new, wider bridge, still called Pegasus in tribute to the airborne troops whose shoulder flashes show the winged horse. The Ox and Bucks Light Infantry landed here by glider in the fields adjacent to the Orne and Canal river bridges. The aim was to control these crossings to shield the later assaults on Gold Beach around 5 miles to the south from counterattack. The Horsa gliders were towed across the channel from Dorset, each held around 20 men. They gave their name to a Horsa bridge across the River Orne. In the 10 minutes it took to capture Pegasus Bridge, the invasion of Normandy took its first fatal casualty, Lieutenant Den Botheridge. He is buried nearby at Ranville Cemetery. The church has a stained glass window with the airborne insignia. There are sadly many military cemeteries in Normandy. Some are predominantly single nation, but many are mixed, with Allied and Axis soldiers lying together as the victims of circumstance they often were. Not only soldiers are commemorated here, this paratrooper dropped with his dog, Glenn, and they perished together. The cemeteries are also multi-faith. It takes a truly brave chicken to fly to Normandy. US paratroops were also in the air on the night of the 6th of June. In a rather chaotic drop to secure the exits from the US beaches, St Mary Glades fell at a very heavy price for the 82nd Airborne. Come daybreak, at 7:25 AM the British landed on the easternmost beach, Sword. This was originally the most heavily defended beach in Normandy, but the massive preliminary bombardment and wading tanks helped to deliver a relatively light 630 casualties. Along with the 29,000 men of the British Second Army landed here on the 6th was Piper Billy of Lord Lovet's commandos. He was made famous in the film The Longest Day when piping in the Pegasus Relief Force, hence the shelling. Traffic congestion on the beach and stiff resistance from strong points inland held the British advance here at Perrier's Ridge. The line lay safely beyond the Orne, but short of Cannes, and didn't move for a month. Juno Beach was the next to the west, and the 21,400 men landed here were predominantly Canadian, but with elements of the British Second Army. The 1,200 casualty figure on the Canadian beach was the second highest of all the D-Day landing zones. The preliminary bombardment wasn't as effective at Juno, and there was congestion. However, the Canadians advanced further inland by the end of the day than any other force landed. The Free French contribution on D-Day was not large, but Navy ships helped with the bombardment of Juno, and commandos liberated the town of Oosterheim on the west end of Sword Beach. Between and just behind Juno and Gold Beaches stands the British Normandy Memorial. The memorial recalls the 22,442 servicemen and women under British command who fell during the whole of the Battle of Normandy. Not only soldiers but sailors and airmen are remembered at this simply elegant tribute. Standing guard over Gold Beach at Arromanches is this M4 Sherman tank. This was the quietest British beach with only 413 casualties out of the 25,000 British Second Army troops landed. Also brought to Arromanches was the stupendous prefabricated Mulberry Harbour. When assembled, these caissons created an artificial port the size of Dover. You see a lot of tanks in Normandy, and they cause almost as much confusion now as they did then. This M4 Sherman's main foe in 1944 was this, the Mark IV Panzer, both medium tanks. They were both Manoeuvrable, reliable and evenly matched good general purpose machines. But the Mark IV was often confused by the Allies with this beast, the Tiger heavy tank. In fact, there were so few Tigers in Normandy that the 6 lost following tank ace Michael Wittmann's legendary attack at Villers-Bocage represented 16% of the force available at the time. Tigers carried a version of this, the 88mm anti-aircraft gun, that was also devastatingly effective against Allied tanks. More numerous than the 88mm gun tanks were the also rather alarming Panther mediums. They were really in a different class to the Shermans, which didn't stand much of a chance in a one-on-one. Scattered around Normandy are upgunned American 76mm Shermans, none of which seem to have actually been available in June 1944. American doctrine at the time was to use lightly armoured but big-gunned tank destroyers, such as this M10, in a shoot-and-scoot anti-tank role. Anyone inclined to think that the US were duped into fighting World War II should visit their cemetery above Omaha Beach. There is no more eloquent message telling history that these men were heroes, not fools. Many brothers are buried here, including 2 of the Neeland brothers, whose story inspired Saving Private Ryan. In fact, a 3rd brother, posted as missing, also survived the war as a POW. 2 others are buried side by side, although they died in different wars. Quentin was killed in World War I, and Ted suffered a heart attack after leading his troops at Utah Beach. They were both sons of President Theodore Roosevelt. The cemetery overlooks a bluff that gave the first ray of hope at Omaha. This bluff, or cliff, is where the soldiers first found a way to advance inland from the beach. The draws or valleys were obvious exits and so heavily defended, with machine gun nests firing along the shoreline. The sand bluffs were less well covered. General Cotter managed to establish an HQ on these bluffs above Vierville. Despite the inaccurate bombing raids and naval gunfire, the tide swamped tanks and decimated leadership, all but 2,500 of the 32,250 men embarked did get off the beach. Those that escaped then set about clearing the Atlantic Wall reinforced concrete bunkers such as this one. Omaha also had its own artificial concrete Mulberry Harbour, but it wasn't well secured and was destroyed by a gale, which also disrupted the British Mulberry. The Americans were never keen on the concept, and it was discovered that, owing to its geology, on a good day, supplies delivered directly onto Omaha Beach could equal those delivered through the dock, albeit not directly onto trucks. In contrast to the lethal chaos of Omaha, the final American beach, Utah, suffered the lowest casualty figures of all the landings. Of the 23,250 disembarked, only 197 were injured or killed. The worry with Utah Beach had been that a marsh had been flooded directly behind it. The US paradrop the previous night had been tasked with clearing the causeways off of Utah and into the Bocage country behind it. The paratroops had mustered and completed their mission. The pornographic-looking white bollards marked the liberation route to Berlin. The booby-trapped, machine and field gun-infested hedgerows of the Bocage is Band of Brothers country. This is the burial stone of Tiger Ace Michael Wittmann. It's in the German cemetery at La Calme, inland from the American beaches. It's been stolen 3 times, which gives you some idea of the character this kind of place can attract. Otherwise, the cemetery is comparatively neglected and maintained by volunteers, of which there can't be many in rural Normandy. I have to be careful about transferring preconceptions onto this place, but the exit gate is supposed to represent Valhalla. It made me want to climb the walls. We left the British drinking tea outside Cannes on the 6th of June. On the 7th, Operation Perch begins, trying to encircle Caen, but comes unstuck when 7th Armoured Division blunders into Michael Wittmann's Tigers at Villers-Bocage. Operation Martlet then pushes southeast of Caen into the teeth of SS Armour to secure the jump-off for Operation Epsom at the end of June. The Canadians are preparing to take Carpiquet Airport to protect the flank. Through this door, at Ardennes Abbey, 20 Canadian POWs were led to be shot in the back of the head by members of 12th SS Panzer Division. It was easier than feeding them. All sides killed prisoners, but such was the enthusiasm of the SS that quite a lot of them needn't have raised their hands. You're looking at the blood-soaked Scottish corridor. The objective of Epsom was to cross the River Alder and take the high ground around Hill 112. This would isolate Caen and maybe lead to its abandonment. This meant 15th Scottish Division slugging it out with the fanatics of 1st and 2nd SS Panzer Corps. The Scots captured the bridge across the Aldan, then let the 11th Armoured Division pass on up the hill. The summit changed hands several times before the 11th retreated back over the Oder to defend an expected massive counterattack. This 75mm gun Churchill tank on top of Hill 112 is another that I don't think actually took part in the battle. On the 8th and 9th of July, Operation Charnwood finally manages to capture Caen south of the River Ain, but not before the preliminary bombardment has devastated the city, which some Normans have still not forgiven. Operations Atlantic and Goodwood clear the city and push further south to the Verrières Ridge later in July. While the British and Canadians are chewing up and being chewed up by the German armour, the Americans break out around St. Lo. The Germans counterattack and fall into a trap here in the valley of the Dives below Mount Ormel, occupied by the Poles following Operations Totalize and Tractable. The Poles have been pushed out ahead, surrounded by thousands of Germans trying to escape the carnage wrought by fighter bombers in the trap around Falaise. From the 19th to the 21st of August, the Poles hold out until relieved by the Canadian Grenadier Guards. On the plain below at St Lambert-sur-Dives, Major David Vivian Curry is winning a Victoria Cross. On the 18th of August he commanded a small mixed force of tanks, guns and infantry which in the course of the next few days attacked and secured the German escape routes across the Dives against overwhelming odds. This is Chambois, just to the east of which Polish and American forces linked up to finally close the Falaise pocket and effectively destroy German Army Group B and end the Battle of Normandy. For you, the war is over.